But thanks to the publisher for the review copy, and to all of you for helping us to reach 250,000 subscribers. From Glen and I, that is absolutely awesome. In a slight shift from some of Daedalic's recent titles, we've got Wildcat Gun Machine. On paper at least, it promises to bring bullet hell to a Hades-like experience, but with a fully handcrafted world. It's undoubtedly full of some beautiful artwork. We all know the unwritten law that introducing cats into any game makes it at least 5 to 10% better, but where Hades thrives is on its consistent narrative, which expands and grows through each of your playthroughs. Is it the perfect bullet hell shooter hybrid, or has it left me feline a little hollow? Oh no. Yeah, that was ultra dad joke level, Glen. I'm sorry about that one, mate. Well, let's find out. Wildcat Gun Machine cares little about narrative. This is a game all about the shooting, the controls, and those fast weapon switches. While this might seem like a minor point, it's one of the main reasons it doesn't quite have the longevity that it otherwise could have done. The main protagonist looks awesome, she rides around in giant mechs, and she can be summoned back to life by ethereal cats. If that's not ripe ground for some sort of storyline, I don't know what is, and it feels like a missed opportunity. The game's controlled using a twin stick system. The right to aim, the left to move, and you can dodge dash in any direction, which has a cooldown timer between use. You'll have access to a primary and secondary weapon, with the primary having unlimited ammunition. Each stage is split up into several color-coded areas. These show which keys can access which area, and to get these you'll need to move through the maze-like level, entering a room and trying to fight off all of the enemies. This is where the bullet hell combat really kicks in. It's all about constantly moving, trying to avoid taking damage, picking up any power-ups that you find in an area, and spraying anything else that moves. Some rooms will have environmental hazards in them, like laser beams or rotating plumes of gas, and once every enemy's been defeated, then the doors open and you can move on. Now, a gripe I had very early on, and which persists throughout the entirety of the game, relates to the waves of enemies you'll have to fight. There's no indication of how many you've got left. Sometimes it can be 20 enemies, sometimes 50. If they'd included some form of on-screen visual indication of how much you had left to fight, particularly on the easier stages, it would have reduced some of the fatigue that begins to build up. Combined with that the earlier levels are so easy and some of the enemies don't move, there are times where you're just looking around trying to find the next enemy to kill to be able to progress. Again, a simple indicator pointing to the last remaining enemies would have fixed that pacing issue. Despite those gripes, it's still an enjoyable experience, and you'll unlock a variety of different weapons which you can equip from the main area. For each enemy that you slay, you'll also gain some bones, and any skeletons which you find around the stages can also be looted to give you some more, and these are used for the game's upgrade system. This allows you to purchase new guns, as well as grenades, and a few permanent character upgrades like the speed that you move, the number of grenades or dashes that you have, and their relative cooldown timers. And you can also purchase extra lives here. These allow you to continue from where you fall, and if you do lose all of your lives, you can just click continue and carry on almost exactly from where you left off, at the cost of losing some of those collected bones. It's almost too forgiving a system. Now, each stage has a number of boss fights, and these are certainly a highlight of the game. These are reasonably well designed, and they vary in difficulty, and once you've defeated all the bosses in a stage, collected all the keys, you'll unlock the final boss, who will be riding around in a Wildcat gun machine, and once you defeat them, you'll have access to it. This is essentially a special ability. A bar builds up as you kill enemies, and upon its activation, you'll enter your mech, become completely invulnerable, and have a few seconds of visceral carnage. In the first half of the game, it's entirely unnecessary but very fun, and in the second, when there are some genuinely difficult areas, it becomes much more worthwhile. Although you'll unlock a few of them, it really doesn't make a huge amount of difference which one you choose, as they're all invincible and they can all do ludicrous amounts of damage in their time. It's more an aesthetic choice. If we look at the different guns that you can pick up, they follow a real linear path in terms of their abilities. You'll start out with lowly ones and move on to very good ones. Each time you find a new weapon, weapon, it tends to make any previous ones entirely redundant. I think a better move may have been to randomize the gun system, having them all of a similar power, but good in certain situations, and then add some upgrades to these. As you move from stage to stage, you'll realize that the core formula remains very consistent. In the lead up to launch, there were some comparisons made to games like Doom, with its old school collector key, go to door system, and while it's certainly applicable here, and there are a few secret rooms and areas to find, there's never really a sense of exploration, only of moving to get to the next area, to kill all the enemies, to find the key, to then beat the boss and move on. Progression for the sake of progression, rather than the intrigue of finding something new and exciting. Now, it might sound like I really didn't enjoy Wildcat Gun Machine, and it's not the case. It's just important that you know what type of experience this is and what it isn't. It's a switch your brain off twin stick shooter with some nice boss fights, and it certainly caters to that pick up and play style. It just feels like they could have done more with what they have here. Gameplay scores 12 out of 20, and the controls score 16 out of 20. Onto visuals and performance, and Wildcat Gun Machine certainly looks beautiful. It has a fantastic hand-drawn art style, and I do appreciate that this isn't procedurally generated. Some of the animations are really nice, and each of the weapons has a unique feel to it. Performance aims for 60 frames per second in both docked and handheld modes, but as I've seen many times with bullet hell shooters, when the lead begins to fly, you'll see a few fluctuations in that frame rate. For the most part, it never drops below 30, but the thing with 60 FPS is, if you're going to go for it, it has to be maintained, as a drop from 60 to 40 is very noticeable. Now, I do appreciate the 60 here, and it is kept for most of the experience, and it keeps it feeling nice and slick. The artwork is lovely, and the load times are decent. On an audio standpoint, there are some excellent tracks here. And each level has its own themed music, but repetition does creep in, and some of the audio loops are a little too small, which combined with some of the more repetitive gameplay elements can be a little irritating. Weapon sound effects and enemy noises are all good, but there are a few weapons which don't seem to emit any sound at all. Or very little. There's no HD rumble, which would have been a nice addition. I'd give the visuals and performance 15 out of 20, and the audio 13 out of 20. This one's going to set you back £10.39 at the moment with a 20% pre-order discount, but the normal price is £12.99 or your regional equivalent. Although I haven't timed how long it's taken me, I'd say you're looking at about 6 to 10 hours in total. The price is about right. It's a very arcadey game, switch brain off and pick up and play, but the gameplay never really hits its full stride, and it would be a game that I wouldn't be disappointed if I'd picked it up on a sale. Overall, I give value 12 out of 20. Daedalic's Wildcat Gun Machine is a fast-paced action shooter that promises big things but never quite delivers. I feel like a sequel that fleshes out the RPG elements and adds in a storyline while tweaking up some of the gameplay mechanics in those levels could be something really enjoyable, but as it stands, it gets a still reasonable SwitchUp score of 68%. If you enjoyed the review, then consider letting me know down in the comments. And if you didn't, also do the same and I'll do my best to reply. If you want any other information or I've forgotten anything, also hit me up down in the comments. And once again, a big thanks from us for 250,000 subscribers. That's absolutely absurd. Thanks to our patrons for supporting us each and every month. And as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!